Hey, everybody, it's the What's Your Story podcast once again coming at you this week. I'm Ron Coughlin, your host, and this podcast, you can find it on Spotify, iTunes, as well as YouTube. And what I do is I would love it if you could just like the podcast, share it with your friends, as well as download it. It helps us to get to the numbers we're looking at. Now, today, we have another great guest that's joined us. This is Brydon McMillen. Ironically, that's my wife's maiden name as well, but they're not related in any way. Today Brydon is from a marketing firm here in Canada that specializes in digital marketing and especially automation related to AI. And really, I can't do that any justice. So welcome, Brydon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, and a little bit about your company that you work with, and then we'll get started into some great line of questions around this world of AI and how it's changing the world.
Yeah, I would love to. So my background, I guess, originally is in engineering. That's what I studied in school, and eventually made the transition away from that, which is probably the most classic thing you can do as somebody who studied engineering, is end up finding yourself in the business or marketing world. The data analytical side of digital marketing really spoke to that sort of analytical side, where I feel like I actually get to exercise that a lot more in the digital marketing landscape than in any engineering roles that I held in the past. So I started out, I was the first employee at a really small boutique agency, helped grow that and end up selling for 7 figures. And then I stayed on board with the larger agency that had acquired us for a handful of years. And then just recently this year, I went out on my own and am running my own agency ever since late February. So it's called Plateau PPC. I do pay-per-click marketing, so Google Ads, paid search primarily for fintech, SaaS, insurance, like a lot of these really, really highly competitive, high CPC industries that need their paid search marketing to be done really, really well to get an ROI because it's so expensive. And then where sort of AI fits into it, I mean, I was using ChatGPT. I think like maybe the first week it came out, I was showing all my colleagues how cool it was. And then over time, the models have improved in various ways, have gotten new functionalities. And now that I'm, running my own agency, I'm no longer a solopreneur. I have a couple full-time employees, but as a very, very lean startup, finding automations, finding ways to leverage tools to take work off my plate is pretty crucial because there's a never-ending flow of things that need to be getting done.
Well, that's amazing. So you've obviously embraced this whole world of AI, and I understand that you've been using it for storytelling and also using it in a way to connect to consumers in a different way. Why don't you explain a little bit about that and how you guys are using it and what tools you're using and why you think it's beneficial for others to be using these platforms?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, so I think that there's a human component that needs to always remain there. But in the past, there would be, when I first started my marketing career, for example, the advice I was always given, the 101 thing is know your customer. There's an unlimited ROI on market research, and you can never do too much of it. So with some earlier business ideas that I had spent dozens of hours reading through forums, going on Reddit threads, reading through Quora forums, finding where are these customers, what are they saying, what are the pain points they're expressing, what are they essentially telling people that they want in a product or in a service. And so that still, I think, is just as relevant of a thing that you can be doing nowadays, except now it's a lot easier to aggregate that data in 10 minutes instead of a dozen hours. So you can obviously just do some deep research run on Claude and be pulling all these insights, and then it'll give you a variety of different links if you do want to just double check, go through the threads yourself and stuff. But information gathering, I think, is one of the most sort of I guess, obvious and one of the potentially highest leverage uses of generative AI if you're doing it right. And yeah, there are tools as well. My world is paid search, so it's a little bit less on the creative side of things, right? Because the ad is just text. But that being said, if people are in social media or if they're in paid, if they're doing meta ads, TikTok ads, finding out what content is going viral, what your competitors are doing at any given time. I know there's a lot of tools for that. I'll shout out a Canadian one called Zavi. Um, and yeah, you can just sort of see how you are positioned relative to other folks in the space, see what are the posts that are gaining a lot of traction recently, and that should help with content ideation and figuring out what you might want to be posting. And where it applies to me, I use these kinds of workflows as well because of Google Ads landing pages, right? That is the aspect where in this role of being primarily just like a one channel specialist of running primarily just Google Ads, the landing page still is where most of the sort of creative and the storytelling and the bringing users in comes into play.
What's really interesting in today's world is that consumers really want to trust their marketing, meaning when they see something online or in a traditional way, they want to make sure that it's actually coming from a real person. For one, it's authentic, and consumers are actually becoming skeptical, with this automation, and they want to make sure that what they're seeing in the narrative is actually real. And so, how do you guys ensure that you are, keeping brands consistent and on track based on this whole skepticism that's out there from consumers today?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the brands that I'm going to work with are, embracing AI, but still keeping on their talented marketers and storytellers. I agree completely with what you're saying. Um, there's so from my perspective, the way that I experience this phenomenon that you're talking about is people coming to me and saying, "Hey, I have this new SaaS company. Maybe you can help to market it." And it's always bootstrapped. And then when I go on the website, it's always like a Lovable or a Claude Code website. And most people, I don't know about most people in general, but people who work in this space and people who've ever built a website or done any sort of vibe coding know what it looks like and can spot it almost instantly. That they all have kind of a look to them. My website is on Lovable, but it's not really a funnel where I'm trying to send too many people through. But so I'm not a hater of Lovable, but if you have a website that people can look at and say, "Oh, this seems like it was vibe coded up in a weekend," then they're gonna probably think the same thing about your product. If you don't have any video of real humans, then once again they're maybe going to think, is this just the side project that was vibe coded up in a weekend of somebody, and this isn't a product that I can necessarily feel that I can trust. And that's why I think my maybe hot take is I think that the SaaS apocalypse, as they called it, was pretty overblown because most SaaS companies of value are selling a lot more than just a program that can do some features, right? There's reliability, there's long-term trust, and there's integrations, there's partnerships that, those are things that you can't catch up to using AI tools.
You mentioned you have a lot of talented people working with you, and obviously they're creating marketing programs and digital programs as well as ads. Now, one of the things that AI can do is optimize A and B testing related to creative and other things. But so, how does the unique role of storytelling that data and algorithms can work with to simplify, but they can't actually necessarily replicate what humans can do? How do you actually do this practically, and then use your people to make sure that it's truthful and it's is real. It's not necessarily just all AI generated.
Yeah, that's kind of the $1 million question. Because yeah, anything that you can do purely with AI tools and not with any sort of domain expertise in a particular area, you have 1,000 competitors who can just do the exact same thing. So you're not really getting ahead of anybody if you're just doing something. Everybody has access to the same tools. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's there. I think most people have probably had this experience where when you use an AI tool to help you do something that is brand new to you, you're very impressed with what you're able to get from it. Like, wow, this is so good. When you try to use an AI tool to do something that you're really, really good at and try to replicate something that is already in your area of expertise, you're like, wow, this is so far behind. Like, this is nowhere close to what an expert can do. And so there's maybe that blind spot where once you have that realization for something that you know you're good at, then maybe the light bulb should go that's the same thing with all these other things, and they look impressive to maybe a non-expert. So yeah, to answer the question directly, it is tough. I think you need to have people knowing what is the unique advantage that they bring to the table. So for somebody it's storytelling, for somebody they just have a way with words, so it's copywriting. Another person, if it's creative image generation, they need to probably be applying their human input to that as much as possible. But it is a tough challenge. I can't pretend I have a foolproof answer for how to be able to actually execute at super high scale without it becoming super generic, because anything that you create at scale does need to be reviewed by a human and probably edited and massaged at scale as well.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard you talk about and read about is this idea of using AI to system base your marketing programs, to automate what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Maybe could you give us an example of what you're doing and maybe how you've applied that to one of your clients and how it's helped them?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, the way I think that Google Ads worked, at least the way that I operated with it in the past, because I was always working for small boutique agencies. So the selling point there is more, we have really talented people who are very strategic and can think about stuff, instead of we have these processes where we can just sort of plug anybody in. So it's more of a gourmet local restaurant as opposed to a McDonald's kind of thing. So because that was always my background, I didn't necessarily have these processes that large agencies might have. But recently, as I said, like the necessity of being such a small startup trying to compete, to be able to have processes of that, to be able to make things faster, I started developing various different workflows. So I'll give an example. On Google Ads, if something is going poorly with an account, or if it had a bad week, or even if they're having a good week but you're just trying to improve upon it, I used to have a very ad hoc process of how to go in and see how are things going, how do the keywords look, like what are the top converting ads, what are the top converting landing pages. Then you can go even deeper to user demographics, what are the top converting age segments, income segments, gender, all things like this, and then you can slice and dice those pieces of data against each other, right? So you can get as granular as you want. But it's very ad hoc. I compare it to almost like a CSI investigation, where it's like something's wrong. I don't really know, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to look. I don't really have a step-by-step process. I'm just going to see what sticks out, and based on like the expertise that I have, I'll know I'll eventually sort of find it. What I've done with basically building internal dashboards that now pull all that data in. There's things called tools like Supermetrics, 2-minute reports. I'll shout out the one that I use, Porter Metrics. Juan, the founder there, is a brilliant guy who's really good with these types of automations. So you pull this data into a spreadsheet, a dashboard, whatever, and then you can have an AI agent that kind of takes a look at it, finds any anomalies, finds the data that stands out, and then it brings you those insights. At the end of the day, I'm still applying the same expertise. I'm still looking at what it said, but instead of me sort of digging through and finding a needle in a haystack, it's pulling out everything relevant, putting it all in one place, having an AI run through, pull some insights, and then I just look at those and I say, hey, let me double check: are these accurate? Do these make sense? Mm-hmm. And then let me implement them. So it accelerates the speed at which I can find high ROI insights and be able to implement those things from months to now weeks.
Yeah, so automation is a common thing today, and more companies are trying to automate their processes, their workflows, their organizing their day to their marketing processes. What are the common mistakes do you see businesses actually do when they try to automate their marketing systems overall?
I mean, there's a handful of sort of obvious ones. If people try to automate systems, but they aren't really feeding any kind of context, then of course you end up seeing either the AI making mistakes or it producing very generic outcomes. So that would probably be maybe the number one thing, is recognizing that the AI is as good as its training data, and of course it's trained on all this data that has, before you ever get involved with it. But then you can obviously guide and influence it. All right, the tokens that it's gonna spit out are some combination of its training data that it kind of comes to you with, and the things that you give to it. So if you want to be trying to get SEO content, for example, probably, especially a brand that had been publishing blog posts, been publishing content before LLMs even existed, you have lots of stuff from your real content writers speaking in your actual brand voice that you can feed into the GPT or the Claude project or whatever you want to use. And so you probably should be giving it as much data as you can so that it can actually be able to produce something that is within your brand voice.
Yeah, I have a lot of students that work for Branded. They do internships, and one of the things I always ask them to do is get certified somehow in AI or in, for example, Gemini or whatever that's out there today. Do you have any advice that you could give to students in terms of AI training and certification and making sure that they're ready to be job ready when they get out there? Because many companies are requiring this even before they actually hire somebody, that they can demonstrate they can use these tools and that type of thing out there.
Yeah, I guess personally, I've always been a little bit more of a renegade type approach when it comes to these types of things. So I'm not familiar with sort of official accreditations. I think that's a great idea, though, so I'm not disagreeing with it. But I would also advise the students to potentially, just find different ways that they can play around with it. Younger people generally are better with newer technologies than older people anyway. So I'm sure everybody who's a student right now has a lot of familiarity with these interfaces and how they work, generally speaking. But playing around with them, trying to build things with them is probably what you'd want, because everybody has asked the LLM questions and then gotten answers, and then a decent chunk of people have probably maybe asked it to make them a little app or a little website or something. But trying to play around, see what are the limits of its capabilities too, I think is pretty important. Well, one thing that I personally view as an advantage of mine is like doing my engineering degree. I mean, it's not like I was an AI expert or anything, but we took some of these classes like linear algebra and like data systems that a lot of the foundations of the LLMs are built on. So I feel as though I have a bit of an understanding, although it's incredibly complicated, but a bit of an understanding of what goes on behind the scenes, and that in the AI while it's producing the output, and how it was able to answer a question, and then what questions it won't be capable of answering. So trying to reverse engineer in your mind and think, am I asking this a question that it actually has an ability to really know? Like I mean, this is a silly example, but if I ask it like, what's my neighbor, doing right now or something, it's, of course it's not going to know. But so if you ask it a question that it wouldn't realistically have the answer to, it might just make something up, because it's doesn't really know truth from fiction. It just knows the probability of what it should be trying to spit out.
Yeah, I've found actually that AI is trying to please you. So what happens is, I'll give you an example of that. So character.ai is a chatbot that is trying to replicate an assistant, but it also, you can create a character, any character, give it knowledge, tell it what its expertise in. I created one that was an expert. Her name was Angelica in digital marketing. And I ended up interviewing her on my podcast, but I also brought her into one of my classes for them to ask questions. When I invited her into the class, I said, okay, this is an online class. Here's the coordinates. Will you show up? Yes, I've accepted. I'm going to be there, she said, as if she's a real person. We got into the class and she wasn't there. So I dialed her up in class and I asked her, she goes, no, I'm in your class. Can't you see me? I said, no, I can't see. Oh, I apologize. Well, I'm here now, she said. And so, it was pretty funny. She was just trying to please me and really couldn't do what we asked. But other than that, it seemed very real what she was talking about. And she was very knowledgeable in all the platforms and everything that we were asking her. So it was pretty ironic.
That's pretty funny. Have you heard of it was a viral thing like last month, where you ask the LLMs if, you ask the LLMs, hey, there's a car wash, but it's only like 100 meters down the road. Should I walk there or should I drive there? And it says, oh, well, it's only 100 meters away. Of course you should just walk. Because it's the probability of all the different words you gave it would tell it that something so close you should walk, and it doesn't have an actual reason and capability to say, oh, if I walk to the car wash, then what am I going to wash? So
yeah, what about the car? Where is it?
Yeah,
that's hilarious. So if you were to give some advice to our listeners today of the tools they would use to automate, what kind of tools do you think are the best ones that they should implement into their organizations from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, so there are a lot of tools out there, and it's very easy to get sort of the shiny object syndrome. I would honestly just, personally, I focus a little bit more on the technology. And so I think a lot of marketers nowadays are just doing as much as they possibly can with Claude, and things that they used to think like I said, for example, my website is on Lovable, but I think people are realizing that Claude Code can make a website that looks exactly the same as a website that Lovable will make with the same prompt. So it's like, why be paying for two different tools? So yeah, that's in terms of automating processes, a lot of the things that I mentioned, the researching consumer sentiment and competitor positioning, that's just Claude. In terms of strategic ideation, I'm just using Claude. I mean, it helps to experiment with different models just in case you'll find that some are better than others. I think GPT is better for image generation in my experience, so I use that for like YouTube thumbnails. I think Gemini is the best for copy in my experience, but these things change as well as new models come out. So it's hard to keep up with things. I will say one thing, this product has a lot of hype, but I think it's deserved, is Whisper Flow, where it's just very, very accurate text to speech to text. So when it comes to trying to provide your custom GPTs with all the context that they need, for a specific client or for a specific project or something, you can just, sit there and talk for 5 minutes instead of probably would have taken you 15 minutes to type the exact same thing. So that is one that I recommend.
Yeah, I think that those are all very great tools. Claude is an interesting one. Have you ever used Gemini and the Google products that are out there today?
Yeah. So Gemini is I've probably used it the least between like the big three, between Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini. I probably used it the least. But yeah, that's the one where I find it does the best content. So if I want copy, I'm more likely to try out Gemini. But for general purpose, I don't know. Do you have an opinion on Gemini?
Well, I use it a lot in this podcast, so I can generate questions, I can generate text, and I like it. Also, they have a great training platform, so that's what I advise some of the students to do. And actually, I've integrated into the digital marketing class that I am a professor at Humber College. So they have a great training program called The Essentials of AI by Google, and it's a certification, and they really appreciate that they can take the course and also be certified in it. But the reality is they're not always using Gemini. They're using Claude, or they're using mostly ChatGPT, to be honest. And at times they'll integrate multiple types of AI to create content, and that's really interesting. Now, this is the part of the podcast. I'm going to give you 5 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
All right. So this one, okay. What's the single biggest misconception businesses still have about Gen AI? What do you think of the biggest misconception?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is a big misconception, but this is the only thing that's coming to my mind is that it actually, I think the word AI is a big misnomer and a big misconception, right? If this thing was actually intelligent in the way a human was, there wouldn't really be anything to learn. You would just tell it, hey, go start this business for me, and it could just go do everything that you would have done because it's as smart as you at everything, right? So I guess nobody's claiming yet that it's AGI, but yeah, like understanding that it's a really, really useful tool that can get a lot of value for you, but I wouldn't outsource your thinking to the chatbot. I think that's a really dangerous game people play.
All right, question 2. In 3 words or less, what does authentic content mean to you in this world of algorithms and generative AI?
Human.
Authentic content. What does this mean to you?
Yeah, human, trustworthy. Those 2 words.
All right. As Gen AI gets bigger, which platform, if you had to give up all the platforms and just use one, which one would you use?
Yeah, I sort of answered this before. It would be Claude.
Okay.
Claude Code it is useful. Just Claude the bot itself. And Claude Cowork is pretty cool. I've been using it a little bit less, but yeah, that would be like the general purpose one that I think is giving me the most value on a weekly basis.
So what one marketing tactic out there that is working today do you think Gen AI will actually potentially replace and make it completely obsolete in the next year or 2?
I don't think I have an answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. I think, well, maybe I'm biased because I run search ads, but I think some people are exaggerating how much generative AI is going to make traditional search obsolete. At least on my end, I haven't seen that at all. So that would be my contradictory take to your question. But in terms of what will it make obsolete, that's a really tough one.
Okay, no problem. So question 5. Will AI-driven search engines completely kill traditional brand websites or just change the reason why people visit them overall?
Yeah, that remains to be seen. Obviously, my my bet on that is no. Otherwise, I wouldn't be
Okay.
running an agency that runs Google Ads. And if
Yep.
that does become the case, then these platforms are all going to have ad platforms in them as well. So paid search, I think, won't disappear as a profession. It will just transition over to ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. But I don't believe so. I think it feels like we're. I mean, maybe this is just a narrow-sighted viewpoint, but it feels like we're kind of saturated in terms of not saturated, but it feels like the adoption curve, like everybody's using this. My parents are using it, my grandparents are using it. Like everybody is using the models, and they're also
Mhm.
still doing traditional searches, and they're still going to websites for various different reasons. So um, we'll see if the models can provide you a website like experience every single time that you search, then yeah, maybe websites will have no reason to really exist anymore. But I don't see that coming soon.
What's interesting is when you're developing websites like a WordPress website or a Wix Studio website, one of the analytical tools that are on there today are actually measuring these AI driven searches that people
Mhm.
are using, and that's on the up and up. So it's pretty interesting. And Google was trying to get rid of traditional, Google tags and everything else, and just do AI modeling. But I guess they've given up on that. They're kind of combining it all together, which is very interesting. So listen, I want to thank you today for joining our podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
If people want to get a hold of you and hire your company, and how would they do that?
Yeah, probably just reach out to me on LinkedIn, Brydon McMillen. I mean, I do have, like I said, I have a website, plateauppc.com, where people
Mhm.
could go and fill out a lead form, but it's probably just easiest to just reach out to me directly.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This is the What's Your Story podcast, coming at you with some great leaders just like Brydon here, Brydon McMillen. And we'll be chatting with you soon. And you all have a great day. Don't forget to like or share or download this podcast. We are on Spotify as well as iTunes and YouTube on a weekly basis. So have a great day, everybody. And thanks a lot, Brydon, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was a great time.